A discussion on Patriots receiver Stefon Diggs, what his future holds, what could be done, what can't be done. We'll talk about that. We had a trade on Friday in the NFL and also a player who could get traded here in the near future. NFL Spotlight starts now. Welcome in. It is the Monday, June 2 edition of the NFL Spotlight Show, our first episode in the month of June. Football's getting close. I mean, we're in June already. It's kind of crazy that we are. It's going to be late July where we're going to have a Hall of Fame game. So for the first time in years, we have football in July coming up next month. But the NFL, like we know, it never sleeps. We had a couple of moves that happened on Friday, and we have some moves that could happen here in the near future. We'll talk about all of it here today. Let me bring in my good friend Ben Allen. Ben, what is going on? How was the weekend?
That was good, Ari. Yeah, the off season's flying by. I keep thinking about the fact that we need to actually take a moment and schedule some time off so you can go out and do your partying that I know you like to do here during the off season, which at least when you go out and party, you know that when you have your illegal substances, you don't want to get it on video. You want to make sure that you're staying away from that when you're on your yachts. But Stefon Diggs doesn't seem to care quite as much. He was spotted in a video holding a pink substance, which many are tapping as an illegal substance, illegal drugs. And head coach Mike Vrabel of the Patriots says, we're aware of this. We want our players making good decisions on and off the field. There's been a little bit of buzz in the New England area that maybe they could actually consider cutting Stefon Diggs after he just recently signed. This was something that kind of sparked up, and then it was given a little bit more credence from guys like Mike Giardi, who have been around the team for a while, and saying it really wouldn't be that shocking. But while it may not be shocking, there's a whole lot of parts that would have to go into potentially getting rid of a player you just signed and just gave a lot of money. So one, how real is it that they actually could do it? And two, how feasible is it financially?
Oh, this is a really complicated one for me because when the initial video came out, I just completely ignored it. I was like, this is voluntary stuff going on with the team. He's on a boat, he's having a good time. It happened to go on video. It sucks, but I'm sure there are other players who also do some crazy stuff that doesn't get shown on video. So I completely just ignored it. But there's been more thinking in my head a little bit about it, and especially just the fact that there is a no nonsense guy in Mike Vrabel. The fact that you look at this team, they're trying to build a culture of this is the way to do it, and that's not the way to do it. Thinking about Mike's answer that he gave, which we want to make good decisions here in the organization. And then on top of it, when Stefon Diggs signed in New England, we talked about it here on the show. It was reported as this magnificent 3-year, $69 million deal. Wow, he got that much money coming off an injury late in free agency. It's unbelievable. You go into the details of the contract, it's really not that great. Like the guarantees are not strong and more and more. So I did want to look at the contract and just get an understanding of where things currently hold with the New England Patriots and Stefon Diggs. And let me just preface this by saying that the Patriots have been looking for a wide receiver one type receiver for a long time. So the reason why it would be shocking for me if they were to move on is simply because they have nobody else. I mean, they were trying to get Chris Godwin. They tried last year for Ayuk. They tried last year for Calvin Ridley. They've tried for many other guys over here over the last couple of off seasons. So Stefon Diggs was the guy that they kind of, I guess, settled on. But again, let's go back to the contract. 3 years, $69 million was what it was reported at. But basically, the way I'll preface this part of the contract is that if Stefon has not passed his physical yet, which he has not because he's still recovering from the ACL injury, the Patriots could essentially walk away from the entire contract almost entirely. And it really has less to do with the boat video and more to do with the way the contract was structured. Essentially, the contract states that in order for Stefon Diggs to get his money, he must pass a full physical, including and most notably, the surgically repaired ACL. And that must happen before he actually earns all the money. Now, they have already paid some of the signing bonus already, but that's just part of it. Now, he had a $12 million signing bonus. It was split into 3 parts. He already got $4 million of it over here a couple of weeks ago. The rest is going to come over here in the rest of the calendar year. the thing that is interesting about all of this is essentially, if his knee is not recovering the way it's supposed to be, they technically could move on and ask for that money back. So you look at a situation, I'll give a good example. Jimmy Garoppolo, when he signed with the Raiders a couple of years ago, he was coming back from that foot injury that he had. And in the contract, it essentially stated that you are not going to get any of your money until you pass a physical. That is essentially the language that Stefon Diggs has in his contract. So it has less to do with the boat and more to do with the current situation with his knee. So that's really the interesting part about all of this. But then you also look ahead in his contract, he also has this conduct clause, which essentially says he must avoid any illegal and unlawful or immoral conduct. So that pink powder boat video, I guess it technically could be cited under this clause, but only if it could be proven that he violated something. And I spoke to somebody who's involved with contracts in the NFL about this, and he essentially said there is no chance of proving what that thing was. So I don't think the Patriots could go down this route when it comes to the full contract of, hey, you did something illegal, we could prove it. I don't think there's any way of proving that. Maybe if you do, I guess, a drug test, I guess that's possible, but that's not something possible here. So I don't think that is something the Patriots go with. So really the only way to do this would be through the entire injury element, but you can't cut the guy now because of the injury because he is still recovering. Up until now, for what it's worth, Stefon Diggs has been training in Miami because that's where his doctor is, and he has been recovering there. And slowly but surely, he is believed to be ahead of schedule. So the Patriots can't just cut him now and say, "Hey, you have not passed your physical yet. We're going to move on." The entire contract essentially is that once he's able to pass a physical, the money is going to be earned. You can't cut him in middle of him currently trying to recover from it. So there's a lot of different angles to all of this. So the Patriots decided to move on from it right now. There's going to be a grievance and an arbiter, and they might settle on something. It'll be very complicated, but I'm going to lead to the side of they're going to keep the guy and they're going to tell him, listen, you better not do anything else off the field that could cause more distractions or more problems here, because we not only brought you to be the wide receiver one for this team, but we have a bunch of young guys on this team. They drafted Kyle Williams. They have two guys they drafted last year in Polk and Baker. They have Keyshawn Booty. Like, there's a lot of guys on this team who are supposed to look up to Stefon Diggs. So this is not necessarily the best way to do it. Now, Stefon Diggs, if you talk to his former teammates and stuff like that, he is one of the hardest working people there is. Like, he could really be an example of that. The way he's recovering from this injury, like his people, when before the Patriots signed him, he's way ahead of schedule. So that is a plus of here. But you don't want to see what happened there with the boat and the substance potentially and all of that. And as a result, Mike Vrabel has to say, we want to make good decisions here because Mike Vrabel is a no-nonsense guy. Like, we know that for a fact. So it's a very interesting situation. Technically, there is a way of getting out of it, but it would become a headache. The Patriots, for what it's worth, historically, they went through this once. Antonio Brown, who was on the team for a week, signed a 1 year, I believe it was a $9 million contract. They released him a week later because of all the off the field stuff he had. They basically filed a grievance. In the end, Antonio, I believe, made 5 out of the $9 million. The other $4 million the Patriots got back. So they've gone through this in the past. I just don't know if they want to go through this again with this current situation of what it was. I think what they're going to do, and this is more of a guess, but they're going to talk to Stefon and basically tell him what they're expecting out of him and really want him to become the type of guy and the reason why they signed him here. And just again, 3 years, $69 million that was reported. This is truly a year-to-year contract. So there's a better shot that Stefon is here for 1 year, and then next year they're able to move on and essentially get out of it pretty clean from a salary cap and cash standpoint. So that is where things stand over here. But I guarantee you the Patriots are not so happy that happened over here last week.
Probably have not seen the last of this story. And this upcoming thing we're going to talk about feels like it's just a repeat topic every single year. And that's talking about Kyle Pitts in the offseason. This time, though, it's a little bit different. We're usually talking this time of year about what fantasy relevance he's going to have in the upcoming season. This is going to be the year that he puts it all together. These are going to be the year that he gets back to that rookie year numbers of 1,000+ receiving yards, but this time he's going to get the touchdowns. A little different here, though. The Atlanta Falcons are reportedly at least considering the idea of moving him. They have been reportedly talking to some teams. This is all still very loosey goosey. Of maybe they'll move him, maybe they won't. They've got a collection of other guys on the team that obviously are very talented on offense. What are the chances this actually materializes and that we see him getting moved before week 1?
Yeah, I mean, this is one that is also really interesting. Kyle Pitts had his fifth-year option picked up last year. He's now entering the final year of his contract. He's scheduled to make nearly $11 million this year, which is a very high amount for a player who had an incredible rookie year, over 1,000 yards, and every single year since has had his production go down and down and down, even though every single preseason we talk about him being a breakout candidate. And this is one where the way I would explain it is I think the front office is now willing to give up on him. But I do think the coaching staff, the new offensive coordinator, Zach Robinson, might not see him as a fit for the current offense right now. So that's kind of the way I look at it right now. But this is one where I know there's reports out there the Falcons won't do it unless they get a day 2 pick. I've spoken to multiple teams. They're not getting a day 2. It would be a shocker if they're able to get a day 2 pick for Kyle Pitts in the final year of his contract with the money he is scheduled to make. And just think about the Falcons for a second. I mean, they're not going to give up on a player they drafted number 4 overall, at least not that front office, who they drafted number 4 overall for a day 3 late pick. I mean, they're holding Kirk Cousins hostage right now, who is making a lot of money, and they're telling teams, we want to pick, plus you take on most of the money. Like, this is a team who is very, very, very difficult when it comes to the trade market. So is Kyle Pitts happy in the offense with that current structure? I think he would be okay with a new, fresh scenery and somewhere else going to the final year of his contract with the potential to get a contract extension with a big year. But I also look at this front office, which is led by Terry Fontenot, and Kyle Pitts was the very first pick he ever made at number 4 overall. I don't think he's going to give up on him just like that. That's the way I would preface this. So if a team comes in and blows them away with a crazy offer, I guess they would strongly consider it. But I think Terry Fontenot is somebody who really wants to see Kyle Pitts actually blossom into something. But this is one of those situations, again, where we've spoken about in the past, where coaching staff and front office sometimes don't see things eye to eye. And I just don't know if Kyle Pitts the fit for this current offense, but I also know where the front office stands with all of this. So it's a very, very unique situation. And again, the reports that are out there are accurate, but it's not the Falcons shopping him. It's teams are calling the Falcons to see his availability. And the only way the Falcons are actually going to go out of here and actually consider a trade is if they get an offer that is impossible to refuse, which, as other teams have told me, is unlikely to happen considering the salary and the production to this point in his career.
All right. Well, from one potential trade to one that has already happened, let's rewind back to Friday. We got a little opportunity to do a little breaking news video on Friday when we reacted instantly to the Bryce Huff deal, trading from the Philadelphia Eagles out to the San Francisco 49ers, reuniting with his old head coach of Robert Saleh, who is now the defensive coordinator there for the San Francisco 49ers. The Eagles' prized addition didn't do a whole lot for them this past year. He came in, didn't do a whole lot. He was a big signing from the New York Jets. He was actually inactive during the Super Bowl. They end up eating a little bit of the money to be able to make this move. We still don't know the full compensation as far as trade picks yet, but what's kind of like the feeling from around the league as to what this move is, what it means for the Eagles, and what it means for the 49ers?
The Eagles have been trying to trade Bryce Huff all offseason long. We mentioned it a couple of months ago. It was him and Dallas Goedert were the two names who were available from the Eagles. Goddard took a pay cut to stay. Bryce Huff was not going to stay even if he took a pay cut because he was not a fit with Vic Fangio. And early on last year, just early on, like as soon as he got there, Vic was barely using him. And it's like, this is one of the things that I kind of respect with the Eagles, that even whenever they make a bad decision, which happens from time to time, and every team does, but last year I felt like they hit every single right button, from Saquon to Zach Bond to Quinion Mitchell in the first round, Cooper DeJean in the second round, Jellies on the third. Like, they were crushing everything, right? But this was one of those signings that just did not work out, and they realized it, and they limited his snaps early on He was not even active for the biggest game of the year, and they realized it right away. And other teams in this situation, when a player has this much guaranteed money, they're going to keep him and force him on the field because they don't want the owner to be like, wait, why am I wasting my money on this guy? So put him on the field. The Eagles realized it was not worth it. They kept him on the bench. And now going into this offseason, they tried every possible avenue to find a way to move on from him. And essentially, they coordinated with his agent and basically said, listen, he's owed upwards of 17, $18 million this year. All of it is fully guaranteed. We're obviously not going to pay all of it. Let's work together to find a way for another team to take on some of this and for us to pay some of it. And let's find a new house for him. And essentially, Bryce Huff, luckily for him, his former head coach with the Jets is now the defensive coordinator with the 49ers. And they come in and do that trade. And they essentially nearly split the salary of here going into this year. So the Eagles take on some of it, 49ers take on the rest. Eagles save some cash, save some cap as well, and move on from a player who did not work. And essentially, he is now with the 49ers, and he'll likely be used the same way he was used with the Jets. If you remember in 2023, his final year of the Jets, he had 10 sacks, but he was not necessarily a full-time player. He was more of a rotational pass rusher there. And he was getting home a lot. He had the number one pressure rate in the NFL. And that's why the Eagles paid him that much money, because they viewed him as an ascending player. But again, it never worked. But I would expect him to be used the same way in San Francisco with Robert Saleh once again. They have Nick Bosa. They, of course, drafted Michael Williams at number 11, bring in Bryce Huff as well. And now that defensive line has been revamped over here over the last month with the 49ers. But I do give the Eagles credit for realizing a mistake, and instead of double downing, just moving on and finding a way to move on. It's one of the, I guess, positive traits that Howie Roseman has that some other GMs have a struggle to do. Some GMs will double down in a bad situation thinking it could turn around, and usually it doesn't. And Howie, over the years, there's countless examples of it where he realizes a mistake, he realizes it right away, and he moves on. Jalen Reagor, bad pick, move on from him right away. Carson Wentz, you realize it's not going well, trade him away to Indy instead of going one more year with him as a starting quarterback. He's done it many, many times. This was another example where he realized it during the year. They put him on the bench, come the offseason, they move on, and now they save some cash and cap as well. So it's one of those things that I think more GMs also should learn. I guess most GMs don't have the leash that Howie Roseman has, but it's one of the things that he does pretty well over here, and part of the reason why they do have so much success over there in Philadelphia.
All right, we're talking there about Howie Roseman, somebody who's going to be with the Eagles, presumably for as long as he wants to. The Minnesota Vikings have decided that they want to keep their GM a little bit longer around. They have now given an extension to Kwesi Adofo-Mensah after 3 years with the team. They had already extended head coach Kevin O'Connell earlier this offseason. A lot of these GM terms we don't necessarily get made public. A lot of people are assuming it's probably going to coincide with whatever deal O'Connell signed as well. So 3 years with the team. They are 34-17 under his tutelage. They have lost in the wild card twice in the playoffs. They're coming off a great season that saw them shock the NFL world with 14 wins with Sam Darnold as their guy under center. It seems like the Vikings got to be pretty happy with the results as far as what the record has shown. What do you think overall of this agreement to keep him around there for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, I mean, this was a very interesting one simply because, at least in league circles and behind the scenes, a lot of people were curious about Kwesi's situation there in Minnesota. Of course, Kevin O'Connell got his extension late January, early February, right away, paid him big money, locked him down, one of the best head coaches in football. But Kwesi's situation dating back to last year, some people around the NFL were actually wondering what his situation will be like, simply because if you look at just the draft history since he got there, it's among the worst in the NFL, for being pretty upfront about it. Like, the first draft he had in 2022 is just an abomination, if we're going to be honest, from Lewis Seen and Andrew Booth and Ed Ingram, and just go down the line. It's not a fun one, to be frank, and really move on. Jordan Addison was a good pick. Everybody else, you don't want to look at it. And the last year's draft is to be determined, of course, led by J.J. McCarthy. But the places where he hit home runs and really grand slams has been in free agency, and most notably last year with the Jonathan Greenard contract, the Andrew Van Ginkel deal, and of course Sam Darnold coming in and becoming a Pro Bowl quarterback there in Minnesota, to the point where they had a real debate inside the building about potentially bringing him back for another year on a very, very big contract for at least 1 year fully guaranteed. And of course, he went on to Seattle. So 14 wins, that free agency, that of course led to an eventual contract extension here. But it took a while to get done, which had people thinking, is there any way they make him play it out? Ownership kept on saying that won't happen. But at least last year, before the season started and throughout last offseason, there was that discussion around league circles about his future there, but he is now locked in. They've had a lot of success there in Minnesota, still waiting to see the playoff success. Of course, they've made the playoffs twice. First time got bounced by the Giants, and of course last year getting bounced by the Los Angeles Rams in the wild card round in Arizona due to the wildfires in Los Angeles. But those two guys are here to stay. They were brought in together, even though there was no real previous relationship between the two, but it's been a marriage that has worked. They've had a lot of success, and that success will continue here in Minnesota. They also announced a couple of promotions in their front office, including Ryan Grigson, who essentially runs their draft. He is now promoted to assistant GM as well. He did interview for a couple of GM jobs this past offseason, did not get one. He's, of course, the former Colts GM, but now he has that assistant GM title in Minnesota as well.
Love to see those guys moving up the rankings, and they should come on NFL Spotlight and tell us their stories, because one day they very well could be an NFL GM, and you have an opportunity to come on and talk like John Spytek did, hopefully starting off a very illustrious career as the GM of the Las Vegas Raiders. Hey, if you haven't listened to that, go back, taking a listen to that. Take a listen to all our Spotlight guests. We have all the entire catalog up there on the YouTube channel, super easy to find. We have had numerous guests. I think we've broken 30 Spotlight guests, Ari, which is pretty fun. So make sure you guys are subscribed on Apple, YouTube, and Spotify. Go back, listen to all that content. Make sure you're following along with us with our daily episodes. We will continue to do these throughout the offseason. And the Hall of Fame game, like you said here, Ari, is going to be here before we know it. So football never ends, never sleeps. Neither do you.
That will do it here for our June 2 edition of the NFL Spotlight Show. I got to get used to saying June because it's obviously pretty new. Again, it's crazy. We're in June already. The offseason is flying, but like Ben said, we will have content throughout the month as we will continue to talk about the NFL, what else is going on, and everything else you need to know. We will be back here tomorrow morning, and we will see you all then.